Good day to you. Hope you're having a wonderful day. We are reading in the book of Genesis. We are ready to read chapter 14. Now, last time at the end of chapter 13, Abram and Lot, in chapter 13, Abram and Lot had split themselves up because their herds were too big and the land could not support both of them being in the same place, and it was a struggle. So they split themselves apart, and then God had told Abram that he was going to give him all this land and his descendants would be like the dust of the earth. And let's see, in the final verse here, then Abram broke camp and moved his tent and came and settled by the terebinths or oak trees of Mamre, and let's see, which are in Hebron, and there he built an altar to honor the Lord. Now we're ready to read Genesis chapter 14. In the days of the eastern kings, Amraphel of Shinar, Arioch of Elazar, I'm going to say Chedorlaomer of Elam, I can't say that name, so I'm sorry, and Tidal of Goam. They invaded the Jordan Valley near the Dead Sea and made war with Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is, Zor. All of these kings joined together as allies in the valley of Siddim, that is, the Sea of Salt. Now hold on a minute, let's count up our kings here. So we have king of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and the king of Bela. So that is 5 kings. Now, and I think they are 5 kings of like 5 smallish towns, or maybe larger towns for back then. Maybe they're even cities back then. By our standards, they might seem small though, but big for back then. So they were 5 kings of 5, smaller territories though. They weren't like huge territories. So the eastern kings, they were from Shinar, Elazar, Elam, and Goam. So they were 4 kings versus 5 kings. Now, how big those 4 were, I don't know. Again, they may have been, smaller territories, smaller kings. So anyway, 12 years they had served this. Now, I'm sorry, this name is difficult. Chedorlaomer, I can't say it. The Chedorlaomer, I'm very sorry. I just can't get that name. That is too much. The most powerful king in the invading confederacy. Now, he was the most powerful of those kings that were invading. But in the 13th year, they rebelled. So they had served him for 12 years, and now in the 13th year, they rebelled. In the 14th year, this Chedorlaomer and the 3 kings who were with him, and they were probably lesser kings that he had, counted as allies. They were, joined together. And the 3 kings who were with him attacked and subdued the Rephaim in Ashtaroth Karnaim, the Zuzaim in Ham, and the Emim in Sheva Kiriathaim. You just have to look at these names, because I know that I am just murderizing these names. I apologize. And the Horites in the mountainous country of Seir, as far as El Paran, which is on the border of the wilderness. Then they turned back. So here they had gone out and subdued these territories. Okay, so they went and subdued these territories. Then they turned back and came to in Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and subdued all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites who lived in Hazazon Tamar. Again, very different name. Then the kings of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Bela, that is Zor, came out, and they joined together for battle with the invading kings in the valley of Siddim against Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goim, and Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of tar bitumen pits. And as the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, they fell into them. So it sounds like they were losing. But the remainder of the kings who survived fled to the hill country. Then the victors took all of the possessions of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all their food supply and provisions, and left. And they also took captive Lot, Abram's nephew, and his possessions, and left, for he was living in Sodom. Okay, so when they won, they just took whatever they wanted out of Sodom. Then a survivor who had escaped from the invading forces on the other side of the Jordan came and told Abram the Hebrew. So, and in this case, saying the Hebrew, this designated and probably meant someone who crosses a border, or maybe descended from Eber, which he was. And so thus, all of the children of Israel were called Hebrews. Now he was living by the terebinths, the oaks of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and brother of Aner. They were allies of Abram. When Abram heard that his nephew Lot had been captured, he armed and led out his trained men born in his own house, numbering 318, and went in pursuit as far north as Dan. He divided his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and attacked and defeated them, and pursued them as far as Hobah, which is north of Damascus. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his nephew Lot and his possessions, and also the women and the people. Okay, so Abram just went with his 300 guys, 318, and attacked and defeated them. Okay. I mean, it's just interesting that Abram was just a rich man in that area. Maybe he was not even considered anything like a king, but he was just a wealthy guy. He had 300 men. He took and he went and got Lot, rescued Lot, and his possessions. Then, after Abram's return from the defeat, and this says in parentheses, slaughter of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shaveh. That is the King's Valley. Now, the king of Sodom. Did the king of Sodom survive, though? Maybe this is a new king of Sodom. Let's see. So I want to roll back, and we're just going to take a moment. As the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, they fell into them. Okay. So in other words, this is a new king of Sodom. This is not the same one, because the other one perished. So they appointed, or, they had their succession, and the new king went out to meet with him. So, now then here we have, well, hold on a second. We have Melchizedek. Okay, the king of Salem, which is, there's a note here that says this is king of righteousness, according to Hebrew, Melchizedek, king of Salem. Now, and also Salem was ancient Jerusalem. That was the city that became Jerusalem. So Melchizedek is the king of Salem. Now, he brought out bread and wine for them. He was the priest of God Most High. So, he is Melchizedek, the king of Salem, okay? He is the priest of God Most High. Now, we don't know a lot about how this came about or how this was, but this is just stated. He is the priest of God. And Melchizedek blessed Abram, and said, "Blessed, joyful, favored be Abram by God Most High." He knew that Abram was favored and was blessed, creator and possessor of heaven and earth, and he's referring to God there. And blessed, praised, and glorified be God Most High, who has given your enemies into your hand. Because Abram went out with 300 some guys and whooped these other people and got all Lot's stuff back, and got Lot and his family. So that's a pretty big deal. So God had to have been with him. And Abram gave him, Melchizedek, a tenth of all the treasure he had taken in battle. The king of Sodom, now the king of Sodom, said to Abram, "Give me the people and keep the goods, spoils of battle for yourself." But Abram said to the king of Sodom, "I have raised my hand and sworn an oath to the Lord God Most High, the creator and possessor of heaven and earth." Notice he's saying the same things Melchizedek did. "That I would not take anything that is yours, from a thread to a sandal strap, so you could not say, 'I, the king of Sodom, have made Abram rich.' I will take nothing except what my young men have eaten, and the share of the spoils belonging to the men, my allies, who went with me, which is Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them take their share of the spoils." So he let his men, his allies, share in that, but he did not want any of the spoils. Now that is the end of chapter 14, because he didn't want them, and rightfully so. I'm sure this is, we can see Abram growing and maturing and learning. I'm sure that he was learning from God as he went through all these things. And rather than let these people have any kind of hold on him, so that he would be only beholding to God. And that's the way we want to keep our lives. We want to keep our lives so that we're not beholden or tied to and connected to other people, especially people who are not following God. We want to make sure that we keep ourselves clean and free of, not having any sinful attachments, not having any connections or ties or debt to sinful things and to people who would basically be out of the fold of God and would possibly try to require us to do things that would be against God, and we're not going to do that. But when you're indebted to someone, when you're tied to them, financially or, in some manner as that, then they can call upon you and get you to do things that you would not normally do. It's much like, I know this is kind of almost humorous in a way, but it's kind of like when you think of The Godfather and Mafia, someday I will call on you to do a favor for me, and it's like, no, I don't want any favors from you because you're going to call on me to do something I don't want to do later. No, that's a deal. That's a deal with the devil. That's not a good thing. So Abram is keeping himself separate and away from that. And he's saying, no, God is the one I follow. God is the one who has made me rich. I'm not going to take anything from you. I'm going to keep myself separate and, and dedicated to God, really. He's going with God. He's saying, I'm staying with God. I'm not getting myself entangled with you or anyone else. I'm going to go with God. And that's the way we need to be. In a very real way, we need to make sure that we are staying with God, following the Lord, and not getting ourselves entangled in all these other things. Especially getting entangled into things that are harmful, bad for us, bad for others, that are sinful. We don't want to have any connection or ties to that. We want to make sure even when we're having business deals, we want to make sure we're doing that in an upfront, legal, correct way, so that there's no way that we can be pulled into things that would be immoral and deceitful and wrong. Okay? And so that it applies to everything, but you'll notice here it definitely applies to money in our dealings in riches and the world's belongings and possessions, and we want to make sure that we keep ourselves free from those entanglements so that we can always worship and follow God and not feel that pull of possibly someone saying, oh, now I need you to do a favor for me, and you owe them, and you're indebted to them, and you feel like you have to do it, even though it's something wrong that you would not want to do. So, and that's just one example. I'm sure there are a lot more, and I'm sure there are probably even better examples, but that's just an idea. And to me, this just shows Abram is growing, maturing. He's learning how to handle these things through God. And now we don't know a lot about Melchizedek, and I can't talk a lot about him because we don't know a lot about him. We do know that he is priest of God the Most High, and that he is also king of Salem, which becomes Jerusalem later, and that Jesus is our priest in the order of Melchizedek. So that's a lot to think about and to try to understand, because I don't have a lot of details on Melchizedek, but basically Jesus is our priest. He is our king priest, priest king, however you want to say that. And notice that Abram had no problem giving him 1/10 of all the treasure he had taken in battle. And so, we give to our church, we give to the poor, we do these things as well. We give into God's work, into the Lord's work. So we do similarly. All right, that is Genesis chapter 14. I want to thank you for listening. Hope you have a wonderful day. May the Lord bless you and keep you safe. And remember, God loves you.